I am 88 years old, and this morning I climbed the stairs of my house without pain, without holding onto the handrail, without stopping halfway, without making a grimace of suffering with each step. I just went up, as if it were nothing, as if my body had forgotten that I have already lived almost 9 decades. And if you had seen me a couple of years ago, you wouldn't have believed it possible. There was a time when climbing stairs was my worst punishment. Every step was a battle. My knees hurt, my ankles trembled, and my hip felt rusty, as if every movement was made with broken hinges. I needed to sit halfway through the day because the pain gave me no respite, and sleeping well, that I didn't even remember anymore. But today, something has changed. And no, I didn't have surgery, I didn't take expensive medicines or undergo painful therapies. What I did was much simpler, and at the same time, incredibly powerful. It all started with a spoonful. Yes, a simple spoonful on an empty stomach, of an oil I discovered by chance, thanks to a conversation I almost didn't hear. I didn't have high hopes. In fact, I thought it was nonsense. But I decided to try it, because I had nothing left to lose. And little by little, quietly, my body began to change. In this video, I'm going to tell you what oil it is, how I started taking it, what changes I felt, and above all, why I believe it can make a real difference in your life if you are also tired of living with pain. I am not a doctor. I am not here to promise miracles. I am just a person who was at the limit and found a way out where I didn't expect it. So stay with me until the end. You don't know how valuable this might be for you, or for someone you love. And before we continue, I want to get to know you a little better. How old are you? And where are you listening from? Write it in the comments. I'd love to read your answers. Now, let's get started. Before discovering that oil, my days were all the same, and not because of routine, but because of limitation. I woke up with my bones complaining, as if during the night I had been carrying weight. My knees were the first to protest. It was hard for me to stand up. I had to support myself with both hands on the bed, push slowly, and wait a few seconds before trying to take the first step. Sometimes those seconds stretched longer than I'd like to admit. Going to the bathroom in the morning was already a small ordeal. Every step felt like I was walking with iron chains tied to my ankles. It hurt when I turned my hip, climbed a small step, or tried to bend down to put on my shoes. The stairs, don't even mention them. There came a point where I started avoiding them. Some days I slept in the living room, so I wouldn't have to climb to the bedroom. I felt clumsy, slow, old. But the worst wasn't the physical pain. The worst was the feeling that my body was no longer mine, that I could do less and less without help, that I was, without wanting to, giving up my independence. When I was 70, of course, I had some aches, but I could still walk to the market, take the bus, sweep the terrace. I even played with my grandchildren in the park. I got tired, yes, but I could. I felt useful, present, part of my own world. But by 85, it was no longer like that. I couldn't walk more than 15 minutes without needing a rest. I struggled to stand in the kitchen for more than 10 minutes. And the hardest part was starting to depend on others for things I had always done alone. Needing help to bathe, to get into the car, to carry a bag of oranges. I remember once, I was at a family gathering. Everyone was talking, moving, laughing, and I stayed seated, watching. Not because I didn't want to participate, but because getting up from that chair meant a scene. Someone taking me by the arm, everyone falling silent while I stood up with effort, and then being asked if I was okay. Again. Those moments made me feel invisible, as if my presence was reduced to what I could no longer do, as if I was fading away in slow motion. And the worst part is, I was getting used to that idea, that this was the price of getting old, that there was no turning back. But inside me, there was still a small spark, a part that didn't give up, that whispered quietly, there has to be another way. And that way came, in the simplest way you can imagine. But to tell you about it, I need to take you back to the moment everything began to change. Kijk, there was a day I still remember clearly. Not for anything special, but because it was one of the hardest days I lived. And also because, without knowing it, it was the beginning of the change. It was an ordinary afternoon. I had gone out to the garden to water the plants. I have always loved taking care of my geraniums, my lavenders. It gives me peace. But that time, something as simple as lifting the watering can demanded too much from me. When I finished, I went to enter the house. And then it happened. The edge of the step at the entrance, just a few centimeters. Something I had climbed thousands of times in my life. And that afternoon, it defeated me. I put my foot up, lifted it with effort, but my knee didn't respond. I lost balance. I fell forward. I hit my leg against the door, scraped my skin, and stayed on the floor for a few minutes, unable to move. I couldn't even scream. I just breathed heavily, trying to calm the pain that rose like fire throughout my leg. It wasn't a serious fall. I didn't break anything, thank God. But I broke inside. My son arrived shortly after. He helped me up, cleaned my wound, asked if I wanted to go to the doctor. I told him no. But in his eyes, I saw something that hurt me more than the fall. Pity. And then, his sentence. The one that pierced my chest. Dad, maybe it's time to accept that you can't do everything like before. Don't push yourself so hard. Rest. You've done enough. He smiled at me gently. He didn't mean it badly. But for me, it was like a verdict. As if the world was telling me, that's it. Your time to be active is over. Now it's time to sit and watch how everything goes on without you. That night I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling for hours with heavy muscles and restless mind. I silently wondered if this was all. If I had reached the point where all you do is wait. To be brought breakfast. To be told what day it is. To be accompanied to the bathroom. And for the first time, I felt ready to give up. I thought, maybe this is aging. Maybe there's nothing more to do. But then, in the darkness of my room, something inside me rebelled. It was an inner voice, small but firm, a voice that has accompanied me all my life in hard times. No, not yet. Try one more thing. And that's what I did. I didn't know what. I didn't know how. But I decided that the next day I would look for something. Anything. A small change, a help, a breath of fresh air. Not to be young again. Not to run a marathon. Just to feel I could still walk with dignity. Climb a step without fear. Live without depending on others. I had no idea that that thing would come so soon, and much less that it would come in a simple spoonful. But before I get to that, I want to tell you how, by pure chance, I discovered something that would completely transform how my body felt every morning. Shall we continue? Chai. A few days after that fall, still with the bruise marking my leg as a reminder, I went out to get some fresh air at the park. I sat on a bench under a tree. There, where many times I had gone to read or watch people pass by. I had no energy for anything, but I needed to feel that the world was still turning. And that's where I met her. Her name is Mrs Theresa. 83 years old, slender, very white hair, and an energy that didn't seem her age. I had seen her many times walking in the park, going up and down stairs effortlessly, walking with a posture that many of us had lost. That day she sat next to me and, I don't know how, we ended up talking. I told her what had happened to me. I said I couldn't take the pain anymore, that moving was hard, that everything seemed like an uphill battle. She listened silently. Then, with a serene smile, she said something I didn't expect. Have you tried taking black seed oil on an empty stomach? I looked at her, not knowing if she was serious. An oil? On an empty stomach? I replied half-jokingly, And will that give me 40-year-old knees again? She laughed. But she told me without hesitation, it won't make you young, but it will give you back mobility. She explained that she took it every morning, a teaspoon on an empty stomach, that at first she also doubted, but over time she noticed how her joints deflated, how she no longer woke up stiff, how she could climb her house stairs without holding onto the handrails. I didn't know what to think. It seemed like one of those things that sound too simple to be real. But what could I lose? I had already tried creams, medicines, pills that left me with an upset stomach and no energy. A spoonful of oil couldn't be worse. That very afternoon when I got home, I searched online. I found several comments, videos, studies. Black seed oil, also called black cumin in some countries. They talked about its anti-inflammatory properties, how it helped people with arthritis, joint pain, and even digestive problems. I ordered a small bottle from a trusted natural store. When it arrived, I was surprised by its strong smell, somewhat spicy, with a touch I couldn't quite describe. It wasn't pleasant, but not unbearable either. The color was dark, almost black. And when I tasted it, well, it wasn't like a spoonful of honey exactly. It had an intense, slightly bitter flavor, with an aftertaste that lingered a few minutes in the mouth. But I didn't mind. I told myself, 1 teaspoon a day, that's all. I'll give it a week. That's how it started. A simple spoonful every morning on an empty stomach. No bread, no coffee, no distractions. Just that. I didn't expect miracles, but what happened took me by surprise. The first day I took the oil, I felt nothing. A teaspoon straight to the mouth on an empty stomach. I was ready to feel something immediate, maybe a kind of tingling, a lightness or whatever. You expect something different when you've placed your last hopes on a new solution, but nothing happened. The second day, the same. Same strong taste, same routine, same result. Nothing noticeable. The pain was still there. My knees didn't stop complaining when I got up. I told myself, well, there are no magic remedies. But on the 3rd or 4th day, something changed. It was so subtle I almost didn't notice. That morning I woke up with a little less stiffness in my legs. Nothing spectacular, but it took me less time to straighten my back, and the first steps weren't as clumsy. I paused for a moment next to the bed and wondered, is this real, or am I imagining things? I didn't want to get too excited. I had had false hopes before, but I decided to keep going. On the 5th day, I noticed something else. I slept better. I didn't wake up with that heaviness in my body, nor with the need to find a position that didn't hurt. I also realized I went to the bathroom more easily. Something as simple as that, which can sometimes be so hard with age, was different. And that's when I started paying attention. The following mornings, the pain gradually eased. It didn't disappear all at once, but it changed form. It was no longer that sharp burning when standing up. It was more of a mild discomfort, as if my joints were waking up slowly, with less protest. I also began to feel more energy. It wasn't that I could run a marathon, of course, but I no longer needed to sit down after every little task. I could wash the dishes without stopping to rest. I could walk down the hallway without holding onto the walls. I especially remember one day, at the end of the first week, when I climbed 2 steps, without thinking about it. I did it without realizing, and it was when I got to the top that I stopped, surprised. I looked back, went down again, and climbed back up. It hurt, yes, but not like before. It wasn't that pain that makes you doubt the next step. I sat in silence, with a tear falling without me noticing. It was a mix of relief, surprise, and hope. It wasn't a miracle. It wasn't magic, but it was something real. For the first time in a long time, I felt my body respond, that I could still improve, that not everything was lost. I told myself, this could be the beginning. And so it was. Because that little spoonful, which at first seemed insignificant, became the first step of something much bigger. Weeks passed. Every morning, without fail, I took my teaspoon of oil on an empty stomach. I didn't miss a single day. I no longer did it out of habit. I did it with conviction. It was my little ritual, my gesture of commitment to my body. And over time, the changes stopped being subtle. One day I realized I could walk through the market without looking for a place to sit every 10 minutes. Another day, bending down to pick something up from the floor was no longer so hard. My legs, which used to feel like they were made of old wood, began to regain a kind of flexibility. The pain was still there to a lesser extent, but now it was an occasional visitor, not a permanent guest. But the real moment came one ordinary morning, without warning. We live in an old 2-story house. For years I avoided the stairs as if they were a deadly trap. I always stayed on the ground floor, even though my favorite books, my sewing kit, and many of my things were upstairs. That morning, without thinking, without planning it, I went up. One step, then another, and one more. When I realized it, I was upstairs. I stood there at the top of the stairs, breathless, not from physical effort, but from emotion. I hadn't felt pain. I hadn't heard the familiar creak in my knees. I hadn't had to hold on with both hands, nor stop halfway. I simply went up. It was like recovering something I thought was lost forever. That day I told my family. My grandson looked at me with wide eyes. "Grandma, you climbed the stairs?" I laughed and said, "Why? Did you think I couldn't?" I also mentioned it to my neighbor, the same one who told me about the oil. She gave me a big hug and said, "See? I told you. You just had to trust and be consistent." The news spread. At the community center where I sometimes went to sew, the other ladies started asking me what I was doing, how it was that they saw me standing straighter, with better color, walking without a cane. And I, humbly but proudly, told them. It wasn't a miracle pill. It wasn't an expensive operation. It was a spoonful of a natural oil every day, accompanied by a firm decision not to give up. And the most important thing wasn't just that the pain decreased or that I could walk more. It was that feeling of being myself again, of regaining control over my body, even if little by little, of being able to plan something as simple as going up to my room without fear, of choosing again what I wanted to do without pain deciding for me. What is this oil, and how does it work in your body? Now, the moment has come to tell you what many have been waiting for since the beginning of this story. What oil changed my life? It's something very simple, easy to find, and completely natural. Extra virgin olive oil. But not just any kind. It has to be cold-pressed, first extraction, unrefined. The kind that keeps all its active compounds, just as our grandmothers used to use. For years, olive oil was thought to be just another healthy fat. But recently, science has begun to understand its true power, especially when taken on an empty stomach, as I do every morning. And what exactly does this oil do in your body? First and foremost, it reduces inflammation. Joint diseases like arthritis, cartilage wear, or even chronic pain have a common root: persistent inflammation. Extra virgin olive oil contains oleocanthal, a natural compound that acts similarly to non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, but without side effects. It's like giving your body a daily dose of calm from the inside. Second, it acts as a lubricant for your joints. Just as a hinge stops squeaking when you oil it, our joints also benefit. The good fats in olive oil help improve mobility, reduce friction between bones, and make movements smoother, more natural, less painful. Third, it is a powerful antioxidant. Over time, our body accumulates damage from free radicals. It's part of aging. But antioxidants like vitamin E and polyphenols present in this oil help protect our cells, keep skin looking better, heart stronger, and brain sharper. And fourth, something not often mentioned, but I noticed firsthand, It improves digestion. Taking it on an empty stomach helps cleanse the digestive system, stimulates bile production, and facilitates nutrient absorption during the day. I, who used to feel heaviness after every meal, now feel light and more energetic. And why take it on an empty stomach? Because that's when the body is most receptive. After a whole night without eating, the digestive system is clean, ready to absorb what you give it. If you give it quality, it will absorb it better. That moment of the day is like a blank page. And when you give it a teaspoon of this pure oil, you're telling your body, here's what you need to start the day well. Moreover, recent studies have shown that taking it on an empty stomach boosts its anti-inflammatory effects and improves insulin sensitivity. There are even studies in Mediterranean countries linking this habit to greater longevity. I'm not a doctor. I'm just an 88-year-old woman who decided to try something different. And it worked. But I'm not the only one. I know several people who, by including this oil in their routine, also started noticing improvements. Older people who now walk more, sleep better, and have regained hope to move freely. And it all started with something as simple as a teaspoon of oil on an empty stomach. How to take it correctly, benefits and warnings. I know by now you're thinking, okay, I want to try it, but how do I do it right? Is there a correct way? And yes, there is. I went through trial and error myself, and I want to save you that. Here I tell you everything I've learned over the years, with my own body as a guide. What is the recommended dose? Just 1 tablespoon of cold-pressed extra virgin olive oil on an empty stomach. That means before breakfast, with an empty stomach. As soon as you wake up, drink a glass of warm water, wait a couple of minutes, then drink the spoonful of oil directly. Some mix it with a few drops of lemon if it's easier to take that way. What kind of oil? Not all olive oils are the same. Make sure it's extra virgin, cold-pressed and unrefined. If you can, buy the one that comes in a dark glass bottle, since light affects its properties. If it smells slightly of grass or fresh olive, you're on the right track. What can you feel at first? Every body reacts differently. In my first days, I felt something curious, a bit of stomach upset, as if it was too active. I also had more trips to the bathroom, but nothing serious. That's because the oil stimulates digestion and helps cleanse. After a few days, that passed. And that's when I started noticing the good. Less pain, more energy in the morning, less stiffness in my knees. How to boost its effects? The oil is powerful, yes, but it's not magic. If you accompany it with small daily actions, its benefits can multiply. For example, hydration. Drink water throughout the day. A hydrated body lubricates joints better and eliminates toxins more easily. Light exercise. You don't need to run marathons. Walking 20 minutes a day, doing gentle stretches, or even moving around the house intentionally helps blood flow and lets the oil do its job. Anti-inflammatory diet. If you can, reduce sugar, refined flours, and fried foods. Add fruits, vegetables, oily fish, nuts. Your body will thank you. Important warnings. Like everything in life, this oil might not be suitable for everyone. If you have gallbladder problems, severe digestive disorders, or are taking anticoagulant medications, consult your doctor first. Olive oil, though natural, can stimulate bile and affect absorption of some drugs. It's also not recommended to take it in excess. Taking more won't give you more benefits. 1 tablespoon is enough. More than that could cause stomach discomfort or diarrhea. Remember, in health, less is more when done consistently. And most importantly, listen to your body. If something doesn't feel right, stop. Every organism has its story, its needs. This worked for me and many others, but it's not a magic formula for everyone. It's just another tool, one worth trying. What has changed in my life since then? Sometimes I wake up and can't believe it. Not because something miraculous happened, but because just a few years ago, climbing a step seemed like an impossible feat. And now, at 88, I can say proudly, I move with freedom, with joy, and without fear. Remember how I told you before that I needed to hold on to everything? That every step was a kind of negotiation with pain, a constant struggle with my knees and hip. Today, that is behind me. I'm not going to say I have the body of a young woman, of course not. But what I have now is independence, and that's worth more than anything else. I can go up and down stairs without stopping, without gritting my teeth. I'm no longer afraid to go out alone on the street. If I drop something, I pick it up without thinking twice. Recently, I did something I hadn't done since I was 70. I danced. It was at a neighbor's gathering. They played an old song, one of those that make you close your eyes and smile, and I got up. I took a few simple steps, but I took them. I felt my body light, as if I had taken years off. I also started cooking again. Before, I got tired just standing in front of the stove. Today, I prepare my meals with pleasure, with patience, enjoying every moment. I get up early, take my oil on an empty stomach, and start the day with energy I hadn't felt in years. My grandchildren look at me surprised. "Grandma, you climbed the stairs alone?" they ask, as if it were magic. And I smile at them. There's no magic here. There's only a small daily habit, a spoonful of something good, and the deep desire not to give up. I've regained more than mobility. I've regained my confidence. I no longer walk afraid. I no longer feel fragile or dependent. And that has also changed my mood. I'm more lively, more talkative, eager to make plans, to go out, to visit, to live. I've learned something important. Big changes start with small things. You don't need an expensive surgery, nor a miracle drug. Sometimes, it all begins with something as simple as caring for your body early, with something as humble as a teaspoon of oil every morning. That small daily act gave me back something I had lost, the feeling that my body belongs to me, that I can trust it again, that even though I'm almost 90, I can still improve. So, today I've told you my story, from the days when I could barely move without pain, to this moment when I feel free, strong, and grateful. It wasn't a fast path, nor easy, nor much less miraculous. It was a small but constant change, a simple spoonful of oil on an empty stomach, a daily decision not to give up. Because this isn't about a magic cure. There are no tricks, no impossible promises. It's about understanding that even in old age, the body can respond when we care for it with love and consistency. I don't want you to think that with this oil everything will change overnight, but I do want you to know that every little effort counts, that taking care of what you eat, moving even a little, and giving yourself the chance to try something new can be the first step toward a more dignified, more active, more yours life. I thought it was too late, that at 85, I only had to resign myself. But I was wrong. And today, at 88, I can tell you it's still possible. That if you're listening from your 70s, 80s, or even 90s, you can still change your story. Don't give up. Don't settle for a life of pain or dependence. Sometimes everything starts with a decision as simple as giving your body a chance to heal. So tell me, did you know about this oil? Are you also looking for a way to reduce pain and regain your strength? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to know how old you are, where you're listening from, and if you're willing to try it too. And if you know someone going through the same, share this video with them. Maybe what we learned today together can give hope to another person who also thought it was too late to improve. Thank you for staying with me until here. See you in the next video, with more stories, more advice, and more reasons to keep going, step by step.